All right, so let's now bring in criminal defense attorney and former homicide prosecutor Bernardo Villalona. Bernardo, you were with us yesterday for this breaking news. Your reaction to the verdict was fairly strong at the time. Now, having been able to think about it for almost a day or half a day, you strip away all of the wealth and the fame and the international attention from this case, and it really comes down to girls being abused, a sex trafficking case. What do you think this verdict says to accusers everywhere?
This case, the case of Ghislaine Maxwell, was a courtroom reckoning. What this says, and the message that it sends to all abusers, to all accusers, to victims of sex assault, that look, your voices will be heard. Your voices will be believed. Your voices will not go in vain. And that is the message that this jury sent to Ghislaine Maxwell and to all abusers all around the country. Doesn't matter your fame, your power, your social status, that you are not above the law. That's the message that was sent. And I praise the victims in this case for their courageousness, for their bravery, and for their strength in coming forward.
That jury of 6 men and 6 women deliberating for more than 40 hours. You'll remember at the beginning of the week, they asked for office supplies just so that they could organize their deliberations. How thorough do you think they were?
This jury was one of the most thoroughest juries that I've actually seen in my career, in the sense of the exact questions that they asked and the time that they took, and especially the request that they made. They wanted to look at the transcripts of the 4 victims, as well as the supporting, corroborating witnesses that actually came in and testified. So they took their time and they took this case seriously, in a sense that they evaluated everything that was put into evidence. That's what we see from those 80+ hours of deliberations, especially when you're talking about over 10 days of testimony. You're talking about 24 prosecution witnesses, as well as over 4 witnesses by the defense. And you're also talking about 80 pages of jury instructions.
All right, so then last question, what comes next? We saw 5 out of 6 counts guilty. That count 2 was about enticement. You see it there, not guilty. And the jury had asked the judge for a definition of enticement. And the judge said, I'm not going to do that. You need to go back to the jury instructions. And they did. It seems like, and obviously wasn't in the jury room, it seems like they kind of couldn't figure that out, so they didn't find guilty on that. But that was a 5-year charge. She's looking at 65 total years in prison. What comes next, and how much of that time do you think she'll get?
So in terms of what comes next, the next phase is going to be the sentencing. The sentencing probably wouldn't take place until probably March, April, or even May, just because the pre-sentence investigation process takes so long. They have to interview Ghislaine Maxwell and get a background, a thorough background, education, family bringing up, her finances, her schooling. All of that is going to be taken into account in determining sentencing, because the judge is going to look at the sentencing guidelines, and they are advisory, so she doesn't have to follow it. But in terms of sex trafficking alone, the biggest count, she faces a maximum of 40 years. The guidelines itself says roughly around 16 to 18 years, but I see Judge Nathan going an upward departure in this case and giving her at least 20 years for the purpose of punishment, deterrence, and rehabilitation, in order to give this defendant the time that this crime deserves.
And she turned 60 over the weekend, so that's a fair amount of time at that point in her life. Bernardo, thanks as always for joining us and your expertise. Really do appreciate it.
Thank you, Phil.